Here for 2023. This is my fourth year. I started in 2019. I think I did. Wow, it's been 4 years putting it on. January was when I started. And so we're here doing it again at the Black Family Technology Awareness Association sponsored KUAW Radio, Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom Radio here at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. I'm your host, B. Michael. This is Shifting Paradigms. We are all about stimulating critical thought in order to realistically redefine our narrative and positively reshape our reality through dialogue with some Kuji Chagali of self-determination. Kwanzaa was wonderful this year too, by the way. We had another successful celebration of the 7-day festival of Kwanzaa during the month of December. It was a beautiful community effort. The Black United Front did their thing, hosting and putting together another excellent effort to bring our community together and promote those 7 Nguzo Saba principles of Kwanzaa. So it was just, a great service that took place there. But want to go ahead and get right into the show. Today's show is called Nature Paradigmatics. We're going to be dealing with the nature of the human being. I definitely find this appropriate today because we're dealing with some dark times again, and I've just been saying this over and over and over, and how we're just really challenged with dealing with who we are as humanity. Who is Homo sapiens sapiens? Who are we? What are we here for? What is our purpose? What are we supposed to do? Right? And so I want to just open up with a quote from an Algerian philosopher, an Algerian revolutionary. His name was Frantz Fanon. In his book, The Wretched of the Earth, he says that every generation, out of relative obscurity, must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. That's the purpose of every generation. You have to discover your mission in life, your purpose. And from there, you either fulfill it or you betray it, right? And so with that, we have to understand humanity as a whole. Again, Homo sapiens sapiens as a whole has a huge purpose in life, a huge destiny to fulfill, if you will, right? And we're going to get into the underpinnings of it. We're going to get into the intricacies of it. And this may be more of a 2-3 part series that's going to really unfold this particular matter here. And this is something that I'm going to really take from a scriptural standpoint. That's going to be the foundation, but we're going to look at some science as well. We definitely want to delve into science, and some people may find those two principles to be diametrically opposed, when in fact science and spirituality, or science and sacred science, if you will, are supposed to be in tandem. You can't have one without the other. Now, I did quote Albert Einstein before, who said that spirituality without science is incomplete, and science without spirituality is vain, right? So we have to really understand these dynamics as relates to getting to the truth, which is what my last show dealt with, dealing with absolutes and relatives. So Einstein's been kind of prefiguring in a lot of my reflections lately and a lot of the podcasts that you all have been dealing with. But who is man? Who is the human being, right? In Psalm 144, we are told in verses 4 through 9 a very interesting premise about who man is. It says, "What is man that you remember him?" Speaking about the Most High being mindful. What is man that you are mindful of him? What is man that you remember him? And the Son of Man that you visit him. How do you make your presence known to this fleshly being? It says, "Yet you have made him a little less than Elohim, and have crowned him with esteem and splendor. You made him rule over the works of your hands. You have put all under his feet, all sheep and oxen, also the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the fish of the sea, passing through the paths of the seas. O Yah, our master, how excellent is your name in all the earth." Okay, so when you're dealing with man, you have to understand that there's a purpose that man has been given. right? The Son of Man has been given the purpose, really, as we read in verse 6, to rule over the works of the Most High's hands. We are to have dominion and authority over creation. All sheep, oxen, it says, all beasts of the field, birds of the heavens, fish of the sea, everything passing through the paths of the seas. Of course, though, these are literary devices. Are these literal sheep and oxen? Yes, they are in ways, but they're also dealing with figurative creatures as well, right? When I mean figurative, it's a figurative language. It's a very metaphorical and matters of parables. And so when you're dealing with that, you're also dealing with human beings. Case in point, when we look at the 4 living creatures in the scripture, you can see them in the book of Ezekiel. You can see them in the book of Zechariah. You can see them in the Revelation of John. You're dealing with what is known as the wilderness encampment of Israel while they were in their tabernacle formation. So you have 4 creatures, right? You have, and this is just kind of to illuminate the reality of how there's a lot of figurative language used, okay? You have a lion, you have an ox, you have a man, and you have an eagle. Well, of course, the lion we know is represented by the tribe of Judah, okay, which is on the east side of the encampment. The ox is the tribe of Ephraim with 3 other tribes. So Judah is led in the eastern flank of the particular formation of the tabernacle with 2 other tribes. Ephraim is to the west as the ox. The man is to the north, which is Reuben, the firstborn, the man of Israel, the firstborn of Jacob. And then to the south, you have the tribe of Dan, which is symbolic of the eagle. So when you're using these metaphors to describe man and humanity, of course, you have to understand that, you know, again, the language of the scriptures many times is in code. Okay. And so even as we're dealing with Adam, we're going to deal with that as well. But again, what is man that you're mindful of him, that you remember him, and that you visit the Son of Man? Of course, what is so powerful is, yes, we're made much more less, or it says here, a little less than Elohim, but we're crowned with esteem and splendor. We're crowned with that, but that's a feat that we have to accomplish. But to be made a little less than Elohim, as we're told in Genesis 1, which we're going to go to even as we speak, that's how humanity was created, right? Humanity, who all derives from the blood of Adam, right? And some would even say the blood of the mitochondrial Eve, right? From which all of our human, you know, extensions and nations and peoples come from. And so as we look at this being made a little less than Elohim, well, where does that principle come from? That principle comes from Genesis 1, verse 26 through 28. Where does the rulership come from? It comes from Genesis 1, 26 through 28, because this is the purpose of humanity. Okay? It says in Genesis 1, 26, Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image." Okay? Our image. And we're going to deal with this word, Selim and Demut. And according to our likeness. So the word for image in Hebrew is Selim, which means the essence of a thing, not just so much the physical appearance, but what is the essence of it and how is it to be perceived, right? And then the likeness, Demut, means the similitude. What is the characteristics of it? What is the nature of it, right? What are its actions like? That's how man was created. Let us make man in our image, right? In the essence of it, and in our likeness, in the nature of it. And let them rule, there goes that rulership again, over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the earth. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This is a unity. This is a oneness. This is a very profound mystery as relates to what humanity is supposed to accomplish in their dominion. And their dominion is to become a united force. So unity is a very important principle that humanity is supposed to attain and accomplish while on earth. Okay? And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said, "Bear fruit and increase, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over all creatures moving on the earth. So here you have three purposes of humanity according to Genesis 1:26 through 28. You have the reflection of the Most High, and that you're bearing the image and likeness of the Most High. And again, what this is really dealing with is the intellectual perception of humanity, being able to perceive reality. And we've talked about this on numerous occasions, being able to perceive reality and then to project the reality of who we are according to the nature, the character, right? In Hebrew, it's called midot, the character, the righteous character of the Most High. What are those characteristics? Love, mercy, justice, truth, peace, right? Forgiveness, right? So these are the principles that we're to embody, that the world is so much in need of. But as human beings, what delineates us is what we're going to get into next, is our ability to control ourselves, to master ourselves. And that is the definitive hallmark of humanity based on our intellectual capacities, our cognitive properties and powers, right? Once we're able to exercise our mind in a fashion that is more geared towards an elevated form of consciousness, then we can truly ascertain this power, this dominion that we're given. And the dominion that I'm talking about is not like just having authority over something in the sense that you're just, dominating it physically, or that you've used monetary measures to manipulate and persuade people to do something. No, you're using intellect. You're using true persuasive capacities to convince people, winning their hearts and minds, right, by the demonstration of righteousness, by the demonstration of truth and mercy and justice, right? You're actually commanding respect and authority, not demanding it. You're commanding it, because what it is, your demonstration is so overwhelmingly powerful that individuals will just yield. And this is the power that the Most High has given us. Okay. And then lastly, he gives us the ability to be fruitful and to multiply, to be reproductive, not just physically, but this fruitfulness comes in the capacity of spiritual fruitfulness. It comes in the capacity of mental fruitfulness, and it comes in the capacity of material fruitfulness. Excuse me. The blessings of the covenant determine that, the womb will not be barren, right? Your fields will not be barren. And of course, you will bear righteous fruit. All these things are a part of the purpose of humans and human nature. So this is what mankind is intended to do, okay? And as relates to this, we're looking at now a scientific definition of Homo sapiens, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. What makes humans human, what delineates us more exclusively from any other species, is that language is the ultimate symbolic activity involving the creation and manipulation of mental symbols, and permits the posing of questions such as what if? It is language, but it is language derived from the mental capacity to communicate. Okay, now of course we know that there are other animals that communicate. We think of whales and dolphins who have much larger brains than us, but to have a specific language such as we do, to have alphabets, right? To have ideas and to have philosophies and to have ideologies. That is what entirely sets the human species apart from the rest of all the other kingdoms of animals. Okay? But it says not all components of human thought are symbolic. The human brain has a very long, accretionary, evolutionary history that still governs the way thoughts and feelings are processed. But it is certain the addition of symbolic manipulations to intuitive processes that makes possible what is recognized as the human mind, intuition, right? And this is what really leads us in being the crown creation of all of creation, our intuition, that neocortex sphere of the brain. Right? We've gone beyond the reptilian brain. We've gone beyond the limbic system. We're now operating in a neocortex system. And this is what Homo sapiens is really defined as. Because when you go back to Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and the other types of human evolutionary appearances that have appeared, they weren't functioning in the neocortex capacity of their brain. They were functioning on a lower evolutionary scale of consciousness, right? And now that intuition has been coupled with intelligence or intellect and imagination, right? All these three capacities are now present within the human being of Homo sapiens, okay? And I actually need to get to a word real quick, but I'm gonna come back to that, okay? So again, this is what really is recognized. The symbolic manipulations to the intuitive process is what really makes possible to recognize or the distinguished human mind. The origins of this mind are obscure indeed. Although what, for me, as a man of faith, right, the scriptures provide us with that particular identification of the origin. Okay, so the origins of this mind are obscure indeed, especially as scientists are still ignorant of how a mass of electrochemical signals in the brain gives rise to what present-day humans experience as consciousness. They use the word electrochemical. Electrochemical signals, right? So you're dealing with the conduction of electricity and the conduction of chemicals moving together. But the invention of language would plausibly have released the earliest of the cultural and technological innovations that symbolic thought makes possible, okay? In the process of unleashing a cascade of discoveries that is still ongoing. One of the most striking features of the archaeological record that accompanies the arrival of behaviorally modern Homo sapiens is a distinct alteration in the tempo of innovation and change. Necessity is the mother of creation. Necessity is the mother of innovation. And we see this throughout history, whereas tools are created, right? Tools are created to make life more simple, but it is the mind that spawns the birth of that creation. It is the idea. It is the recognition of a need and a recognition of how to simplify life, right? And also to advance consciousness and civilization that the mind contributes to. But we know that the mind is the most powerful force in existence. And with the mind, we are able to accomplish all things. And that is the power that Homo sapiens have. So, significant cultural and technological novelties had previously been rare in the previous appearances of Homo, right? With long periods of apparent stability intervening between relatively sudden episodes of innovation. But once behaviorally modern Homo sapiens arrived on the scene, different local technological traditions, and by extension, other forms of cultural diversity began to proliferate regularly, setting a pace that is still gathering today. And as we look at the evolution of consciousness, particularly as relates to what we would consider religious thought, you can see that evolution going from Monomotapa in South Africa region to actually the Nile Valley and even up into the Levant, and particularly in the locale of Canaan or Israel. And so when we look at how this evolution unfolded, we can see Homo sapiens actually dealt with different cults of consciousness. And so with these different cults of consciousness, we saw how there were different totems and different types of religious worship that were present. And when we look at them, there's a book written by Albert Churchward, who was a Freemason in the 19th century. He recognized 8 particular cults that human beings, Homo sapiens, had brought forth. And this is where you hear the phrase, did God create man, or did man create God? And so this is how the mind had attempted to identify this force, this source of consciousness that transcends space and time. And in order to capture that and to make it relational, well, these cults were created. The first cult was the elemental cult. The elemental cult, of course, worshiped the forces of nature, right? Lightning, right? Fire, wind, right? Even the earth. So that was the first cult that existed for Homo sapiens. Then you have ancestral worship, the ancestral cult, which those who are able to see the corpuscular energy of their ancestors and those who have gone on before them, the residue, if you will, of their energy being, right? Because we're all energy. Our bodies are all energy. That's why we can apply the second law of thermonuclear dynamics to us, and that energy is neither created nor destroyed, but it only transforms. So we have, excuse me, drop my phone. We have ancestors who are able to be perceived by those who have that vision, and they were actually worshipped because they couldn't really understand what these energies were prior to being able to identify them as ancestors and as just residue energy of our family members who had gone on before us. Next, you have the animist spirits, the worship of the unseen spirit forces. And this is when you're dealing with principles, right? You're dealing with just straight principle power. Then you have the totemic cult, which are dealing with the principles or forces represented by animals and creatures. And we see this most expressly typified in the Medu Neter, in the mystery systems of Kemet or ancient Egypt. When you see these gods, let's say with Heru, the falcon-headed god, right? You think of Sekhmet, the lioness-headed god, right? So you think of all these different gods that are represented by these animals, okay? Then you have a stellar cult, which are dealing with the worship of the stars, okay? And then the lunar cult and the solar cult. So those are the heavenly worship, the heavenly hosts, those who worship the heavenly hosts, the sun, moon, and the stars, which, interestingly, most of the monotheistic religions, in terms of their, what's the word I want to use? The exoteric, right? Not the esoteric, the exoteric, the outer worship of religion is dealing with the worship of the sun, moon, and the stars, okay? And then finally you have hero worship, which is dealing with the apotheosis of man. And this is something that you can see in ancient Egypt. You can see in Babylon. You can see in Rome, in Greece, okay? Even to the point where now with this Gregorian calendar that we're on, you see the deification of Julius and Augustus Caesar given the months of July and August. But this is what humans have done to identify or to try to place a reference on who the creator is. But the creator, and this is what sets Israel apart. This is my premise of what sets Israel apart. There's no image of the creator. There's nothing that we can do to capture the transcendent essence of who the true and living creator of heaven, earth, sea, and all that is in them is. Whereas most of these other religious cults are merely seeking to identify and create a point of reference of this mind behind the design of space and time, right? And so this is powerful. This is powerful when we can understand what humans have done, okay? And in that light, when we look at the word that really identifies what a human being is, that definitive word is sapiens, which comes from the word sapient. Sapient is a word that means wise or attempting to be wise. And it is a human of the species of Homo sapiens, but we are created as Homo sapiens to exercise wisdom. This is the purpose and the intent of humanity, to exercise wisdom. That's what delineates us from every other creature on earth. And once we are able to exercise wisdom, then our purpose of reigning and having dominion over all of creation can be established. Once we exercise wisdom, we are able to be fruitful and multiply. And once we are exercising wisdom, we are able to reflect the image and likeness of the creator in which we're created. And that is very significant for us to understand. It is important for us to know who we are. Because that is what Homo sapiens means. It means that we're sapient. We're supposed to be wise. But when we're acting like beasts, that is not a human being. You're taking yourself out of the human family. And you hear people say this so often today. I'm on savage mode. I'm on beast mode. We hear that so often today, and we actually revel in that. What's up, dog? What's up, B? We call each other out of our own species. And we accept it as if that is who we are. Right? We call ourselves ignorant. The N-word. We call ourselves that. Not wise. People take offense to someone being, if someone was to call you a prude. Are you prude? What are you, prude? Yes, I'm wise. I desire to be wise. I'm seeking to be wise. I remember when that word was almost offensive for you to be called prude. But to be prudent means to be wise. And so these, and again, this is what shifting paradigms is all about. We're trying to shift the paradigm and bring a more critical minded thought up into this existence so that we can elevate, so that we can bring human beings to the full potential, the realization and the actualization of our fullest potential, so we can bring forth this transformation on earth as it is in heaven. Order. That's what this is all about, bringing and establishing order. But it's so interesting because one of the ancient Hebraic thoughts of someone who was truly fulfilling their purpose is what is called a Talmid Chacham. A Talmid Chacham. Talmid is a Hebrew word that means student or disciple, exercising discipline, which is wisdom. But Chacham is the Hebrew word for wisdom, derived from the word Chachma. Okay? And there are 15 characteristics that this tractate Derech Eretz Zutah says. This is from the Talmud. It says there are 15 characteristics mentioned in connection with the scholar, with someone who is wise. He is decorous in his entering and leaving. That means he is very about decorum. He's about order. When he enters and when he leaves, he's not boisterous, or she's not boisterous. They're very decorous, right? They're very distinguished. They're very, distinguished. That's the word that comes to my mind. They make a humble appearance. They're modest in their sitting. They're subtle in the fear of the Most High. They're subtle. They're shrewd in knowledge, discerning in ways. Their minds are absorptive and retentive. They answer fully. They provide full response. They ask in accordance with the subject matter and answer in accordance with the accepted decisions. So that means they're relevant. They're not just going to change the topic and just go into a random detour. No, they're going to stay on task and on topic. They listen to others and enlarges upon each subject. They expound on it. They seek instruction from the wise and learn in order to teach and practice. That's what a wise student, that's what a Homo sapien, that's what a human being is supposed to do. We're supposed to be studious. We're supposed to gather knowledge. We're supposed to grow in consciousness. As I tell my boys, my cubs all the time, what happens when a tree stops growing? And they tell me the direct answer, it dies. What happens to a human being when they stop expanding their mind? When they stop learning and growing? They die. They die. And so as we read back into the Encyclopedia Britannica, they say the origins of this mind, of this intuitive mind, this intuitive, symbolic, manipulating mind, what are the origins of it? They're obscure indeed, this says. But when we read in Genesis 2, we find the origin of it. We find where this consciousness comes from. We find where this revelation derives. It says in verse 7 and 8 of Genesis 2, It says, Yah Elohim formed the man out of the dust of the ground. Now, was that a literal thing? Many traditions do say that is. In fact, even when you go into the Kemetic Medu Neter tradition, Atum, which is akin to Adam, right, was the one who formed man from clay at the potter's wheel, which is a tradition also shared by the Hebrew culture. And what's so powerful about this, and this is something I read recently, when you're dealing with these spiritual traditions, all of them have the same principles at core. What is distinguished about them is the philosophy about which how they go about describing them. The cultural philosophies, the cultural ideologies, the names that they call upon, or the amount of deities that are present within their pantheon. And so that is where it differs. But when you're looking at the universal principles of love, of truth, of justice, of, you know, treating others how you want to be treated, those things are replete. They are replete in every spiritual tradition. And this is something that, you know, we have to really wrestle with as human beings. But again, Yah Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground. In this tradition, this means he's taken from a group of people that were already in existence. In the Levant, those people were called Natufians. And we went over this a few months ago as we were dealing with Israelite identity consciousness and Israelite identity paradigmatics, particularly relating to the times of Kanye West and Kyrie Irving when they were causing all the ripples in the water about who Israel is. Okay, and so that was a very interesting time. Shalom to my moms, thank you. Shalom to the Isha, thank you for sharing this as well. I want to say what's up to all the listeners. I want to thank you all for tuning in to Shifting Paradigms. I'm your host, B. Michael. Today we're talking about nature paradigmatics. We want to understand the nature of human beings. And we're discussing right now how we are designed to be wise. We were created to be wise. We were created to exercise dominion. We were created to be fruitful and multiply. We were created to reflect the image and likeness of the Creator in which we're created. That is the intent of who we are as humans. And so as Adam was taken from a people and was set apart and chosen to bring forth this new light of consciousness derived from his mental perception. This is what the image of Yah, he actually tapped back into the image of Yah. He was able to perceive reality and the truth, right? As opposed to the relative thoughts that were circulating at that time. He tapped into the reality of the truth, the revelation of the truth. Why? Because he began meditating, right? He began observing his surroundings. He began to do some critical inquiries about himself and the nature of his being. These are the things that allow you to arrive at a higher consciousness. He began to treat human beings like him fairly and with justice. He spoke out against injustice. He was concerned about social justice. And these are things that create an order in society that allows for humans to proliferate. And this is what the kingdom of heaven is all about. It's creating an order on earth that allows human beings to evolve into their highest form of consciousness. And that is what this is all about. And when we arrive at that highest form of consciousness, well, that is when the presence of the Most High is manifest, because that presence dwells within us. We are those temples. We are those vessels that contains the spiritual essence of the Creator. So again, Yah Elohim formed man out of the dust from the ground, and here's where the consciousness comes from, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Right? This is what you read of in Songs in Solomon, Song of Solomon, verses, I believe, 2. It says, "Let him kiss me with the kiss of his lips." That is the intimacy of the knowledge of exchanging this consciousness, this revelational consciousness to man. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Let him breathe into my nostrils the breath of life, chayim, life, to be alive, to be invigorated, to be inspired, to receive revelational consciousness of who you are and what your purpose is in life. And then Yah Elohim planted a garden in Eden, in the realm of pleasure, true pleasure, to the east. And there he put the man whom he had formed in order to tend this garden, in order to cultivate it, in order to bring forth the fullest manifestation of what life is intended to be. But of course, what happens is we got egotistical. We got selfish. We wanted to receive just for the sake of receiving. We didn't want to receive to give. And that's where that free will comes into it. The free will was a matter of us exercising our own thoughts, our own minds, these relative thoughts that prevent us from tapping into a higher absolute consciousness. It prevented us from accessing our highest state of mind. And so here we are now functioning with 5, 6, 7% of brain capacity, right? We're only functioning with a limited amount, an extremely limited amount of brain capacity. But we have 90 other percent to actually tap into to really know who we are. There's a movie that was starring, I believe her name is Scarlett Johansson. It was called Lucy. But it's talking about having lucid consciousness. She actually, I believe, took a pill that allowed for her. And there's another movie called Limitless. But these pharmaceuticals allow for individuals to open up the full capacity of their brain power. But those are things that we have access to without pharmaceuticals. This is what meditation can do. Now, it's going to take effort. It's going to take a lot of mental effort. It's going to take a lot of concentration and a lot of dedication and a lot of discipline. But it is well worth it, right? It is well worth it, because self-mastery is where all this like really comes into perspective, okay? And that's what Adam had done prior to his eating from that tree of knowledge of good and evil. We didn't know good and evil before that. We knew truth and we knew falsehood. We knew reality and we knew illusion. It wasn't that Adam was ignorant. Adam knew all that he needed to know. But what he did not know were the moral relativities of good and evil, which then allows for man to just go off into a tangent of, you know, who's right and who's wrong, as opposed to what's real and what's not. And this is where we can really start making delineations of life. What's real? What's not? Is that the purpose of mankind, or is it not? Right? So these are the delineations I suggest that we should be mindful of. But what does the word Adam mean? What does the word in Hebrew for man mean? Adam. Adam is the word for humanity. But what is understood, and this is a mouthful, what is understood about humanity is that it is the first level of creating the children or the offspring of Elohim. It is the first level, just to be a man. This is why it says no man shall see Elohim. Because if you're just a mortal man, you can't tap into that consciousness. You're only operating at the first level of being. You have to go beyond that to become a child of the Most High. In Psalm 82, verse 6, it says, you are Elohim, and all of you are sons of the Most High. That's who we're intended to be. But this is, again, Adam is the first stage of becoming. The first stage. This is what this is our natural birthright. We have a greater inheritance, but when we come into existence through our mother's womb and through her legs, this is the first level. Okay? Many of us stay stuck right here. But also it is literally known as the expansion or the avenue unto fullness. It is the avenue and the expansion that we have to undergo to reach fullness. Adam is a seed or a concept of being in the paths of reflection, right? A concept of being in the paths of reflection. We have to be in those paths, reflecting as a seed to become the full fruit. Okay? Some contextual definitions are: one, male and female. And this is why when we went back to Genesis 1 in verse 26, you see that male and female were created together. They were created to be a united reality. They were created to be a oneness, right? And when that oneness happens, that is where the Shekinah of Yah is manifest. But all of humanity, including male, female, rich, poor, right, slave free, great, small, Israelite, Gentile, were all created to be a humanity. But this depicts the interior roles of the initiation, the utilization, and the facilitation of Elohim. What does that mean? That means we are to undergo the process, to begin the process of becoming Elohim. We are to utilize that process. We are to use it and to allow it to be made manifest with others. And then we also to facilitate others' process in their initiation of becoming Elohim. Elohim is understood to be the undifferentiated spirit, the united principle at work. Again, male and female, two is one. That is the whole thing. A man shall leave his mother and his father and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. That's the mystery of all creation. The mystery of creation is to bring forth a united harmony through only which humanity can make that reality possible. That's the only way that unity is going to be possible, is through our efforts. That is one of the main purposes of humanity, to bring forth unity. It also implies Adam is akin to the Hebrew word Edom, or who we know as Esau, Edom, but it means to be reddish, a translucence of the fire nature of man. That word in Hebrew is Ish, derived from the Hebrew word Esh, which means fire. That is what is within us. This is what gives us our electrical conductions. This is why they use the defibrillator when someone's heart stops beating. Clear, you get that jump because your body has electrical currents flowing through it. That's the fire that lives in you. Adam is the burning, radiant coal of life, yet to be fanned into full flame by the intelligence of life. It is intelligence, it is wisdom, it is the acquiring of knowledge, the knowledge of Elohim more expressly, that allows for us to reach our full potentials. It is a red ball of fire yet to be exploded, yet to emanate the full nature of its light, a house of fire which warms and makes vibrant the earth. You want to make it a cozy home, right? Flowing with the molten river of blood. That's what makes us alive. Adam is an allocation of the fire of Yah. Adam is the initial stage of man, being a concept of praise in motion. We are the praisers of Yah. We are those who give esteem and witness to Yah, that Yah lives. Yah Chai. Yah Chai. That means Yah lives. This is what war life should be demonstrative of. It is the basis of all forms of sacrifice. It is the state in which the invisible fire enters into the earth to become full by partaking of the tree of life, knowing the goodness and companionship of parts. It is literally unity and oneness with the Father, which is the path of insight to fullness, right? Very powerful. It is the one, the living core of concepts, the Aleph, the first power that expands to many parts as a multitude. The second Adam, Adam ben Elohim, was the first Adam. Adam ben Yosef, who is known as Yahushua ben Yosef, is the second Adam. In contrast to the first is the expanded red fire, the fulfillment of this, the unfolded one according to the full spectra of all its light natures. Yahushua, which is the mature, complete Adam, gives priority to unity with Yah, the Creator, the self-existing one, his desire being for his disciples also to know unity with the Father. I and the Father are one, which they was trying to blaspheme him, saying he was blaspheming over, and they were going to stone him for saying that he was one with the Most High. But he's saying this is the reality of all of us. This is supposed to be the reality of all of us. This is who we are. I'm just showing you who you are, but you refuse to hear that because you're not of your father who you say you are, but you're of your father, the devil. You're of the one who is about duality. You're the one who's about the shadow and the darkness. Okay. The second Adam is in the house, in the position of attaining consciousness unto the fullness of Elohim. In Genesis, man is in a spirit state, having yet fully to enter into form. The teachings of Genesis designate the process by which the spirit's cloud and dust form a collection of thoughts and values, enters via Yosef, right? I have brought forth a son. From the angelic into an earthy, a visible house. So we are to bring the angelic down to the earthy. And this is when you see that spirit descending on man, right? On Yahshua in the book of John, and him being ordained the Lamb of Elohim. In the book of Exodus, it describes the spirit entering into a form of the earth for the express purpose of being the unfolded tabernacle of Elohim. And this is what I was talking about earlier, that we are those vessels. And as those vessels, we house the spirit of the true and living creator, the source of life, the mind behind the design of space and time. Continuing on. Our habitation, the body, our flesh, as mortals, demonstrates to us, on one hand, the confinements and limitations that our lower nature humbles us to come into full knowledge of the light energies within. So on one hand, it shows us our limitations, the flesh does. But on the other hand, it demonstrates the inner life dynamics to us via reflection, what we are intended to reflect. And it warms and nurtures us unto maturation, full maturation. And that is perfection. When we become fully mature, when we become the man that Shaul of Tarsus speaks of, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spoke as a child, but now I'm a man, I put away all childish things. When all those childish things are put away and we come into full maturation, that is when we enter into perfection. All that means, the word in Hebrew, tamah, just means to be perfect, to be mature, to be complete. Adam is formed in the likeness of Elohim, and this likeness does not limit mankind to one sphere of operation. It does not limit us to just earth, right? Even as Elohim is not restricted. We have access to in dimensions that we don't even know. Dimensions. And it's so interesting, these movies are now talking about the multiverse. They're talking about this. And even artificial intelligence is trying to give us what is called the metaverse. They're only suggesting things to us that exist in the capacities of our mind that we think that we need technology to attain, when we don't. All we need to do to travel is close your eyes and focus on your breath. That's where you can go into the different spheres. A focus on individual attributes or self takes us away from the wholeness, blessedness, and freedom of Yah. When you start focusing on yourself and thinking of the limitations that you have, or you just saying, this is who I am, I'm just a man, you're taking away your access to the wholeness and the blessedness and the freedoms that the Most High has given you. The unity of life, right? By his grace, man is provided a united mortal structure to house the resident red ball of fire and all light energies it contains, as a teacher for unity and as a mechanism for the process of reconciliation unto the fullness of Elohim. And this is what the purpose of Messiah was, to bring humanity back to right relationship, restore the consciousness with the Most High that we originally had. Which we originally had. Okay. So red fire, Adam, the fire within us, it begets Seth. The Seth was the third son of Adam after Cain killed Habel. Cain killed Abel. Abel died, of course. Cain went into exile. So here comes Seth. And Seth is a position of the values within the unfolded kingdom, which is the domain and the dome of our King, who is Yahweh. Selah. So that's a whole, like that's a mouthful. That's a whole lot to grasp and wrap your mind around. And I would go back and like review this and listen to this. In fact, I'll post it on the bottom of this on the chat box here. But they talk about two Adams. You have the first Adam who had the breath of life breathed into his nostrils, and then we see what happens with the second Adam. 1 Corinthians 15 tells us, it has been written, the first man Adam became a living being, the last Adam a life-giving spirit. The spiritual, however, was not first, but the natural, and afterward the spiritual. And this is how we are to awaken. No one shall see the kingdom except that he be born again, or born from above. And this is where we start to enter into that higher consciousness. We have to undergo this rebirth process. We have to change the way we think. We have to renew our mind. We have to renew it. We have to think how the Most High thinks. This is why the scriptures tell us, your thoughts are not my thoughts. Your ways are not my ways. But we have to learn the thoughts and the ways of the Most High. And the way that we do that is through the Torah. It's through the books of Moses, particularly and expressly. Expressly. And so I'm going to close with this here. And we're going to talk about this principle called Adam Kadmon, the prototype or the archetype of man. According to Jewish Encyclopedia, there's a doctrine concerning what is called the logos, the order or the word, as also that of man made in the likeness of the Most High, though tinged with true philonic coloring, is based on the theology of the Pharisees. The Pharisees, of course, were the teachers, the rabbis during the days of the temple and preceding. And actually, what we have today, rabbinic Judaism, is the child of the Pharisaic ideology. For in an old midrash, in an old interpretation, it is remarked, thou hast formed me behind and before, is to be explained before the first and after the last day of creation. For it is said, and the spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters, meaning that the spirit of the Messiah, or the spirit of Adam in the parallel passage, of whom it is said, and the spirit of Yah shall rest upon him. So that spirit moving over the face of the waters we read of in Genesis is speaking of the consciousness of the Messiah in existence. This contains kernels of Philo's philosophy of the creation of the original man. He calls him the idea of the earthly man, while the rabbis call it the ruach of Adam, or the spirit of Adam, not only existed before the creation of the earthly Adam, but was pre-existent to the whole of creation. From the pre-existing Adam, or the Messiah, who was the prototypical man, the logos is merely a step. Selah. And so now we close with the idea of Paul as relates to Adam Kadmon, the original, the primordial man. The above quoted midrash, which we just talked about from Philo, is of even greater importance for the understanding of what is known as the Pauline Christology, or the Messiahship, as affording the key to Paul's doctrine of the first and second Adam we just read of in 1 Corinthians 15. The main passage in Pauline Christology is 1 Corinthians 15:45 through 50. According to this, there is a double form of man's existence. Man has two forms within him. For the Most High created a heavenly Adam in the spiritual world and an earthly one of clay for the material world. The earthly Adam came first into view, although created last. The first Adam was of flesh and blood. That's what you read of in Genesis 2, right? This first Adam you read of in Genesis 2. I'm sorry, the earthly Adam you read of in Genesis 2 is the last man, okay? The first Adam was created in Genesis 1. Okay, he was of flesh and blood and therefore subject to death, merely a living soul. The second Adam was a life-giving spirit, which we just read of, whose body, like the heavenly beings in general, was only of a spiritual nature. The only insuperable difficulty of the Pauline Christology, which confronts the expounders of the New Testament, disappears entirely when reference is made to this midrash. As a pupil of Gamliel, who you read of in the book of Acts as well, who actually challenged the leadership of his day to leave the disciples alone. Because if it's of Elohim, you're going to be found fighting against the Most High. But Paul, as a pupil of Gamliel, simply operates with conceptions familiar to Palestinian theologians. Messiah, as the Midrash remarks, is on the one hand the first Adam, the original man who existed before creation, his spirit being already present. This is in archetype. On the other hand, he is also the second Adam, insofar as his bodily appearance followed the creation, and inasmuch as, according to the flesh, he is of the posterity of Adam. Paul, therefore, is not dependent upon Philo for his Christology, as most scholars hold. Indeed, he differs from him on most essential points. With Philo, the original man is an idea. Okay, it is an office. With Paul, he is the personality of Yeshua, or who the world calls erroneously Jesus. With Philo, the first man is the original man. Paul identifies the original man with the second Adam. The Christian apostle evidently drew upon the Palestinian theology of his day, or theology of his day, but it cannot be denied that in ancient times this theology was indebted to the Alexandrians for many of its ideas, and probably among them for that of preexistence. And so what you're dealing with in scripture, when you're dealing with Genesis 1, verse 26 through 28, you're dealing with the idea of what humankind is supposed to be. This is the goal, the aspiration, the intent of humanity. When you get into Genesis 2 and you see this man placed in the garden, you're dealing with the reality of what man is and all their limitations and infirmities and challenges. Okay? But once we come to the full realization of who we are, until the actualization of that reality, we are in that process of undergoing that rebirth. And humanity has to understand that we are supposed to evolve and grow. We're supposed to mature. And even Dr. King talked about that. With all the advances in technology, there's been a bankruptcy, right, in morality. There's been a bankruptcy in consciousness development amongst, wholesale numbers, amongst, those who are majority of this population. But there's remnants where we find this, okay? And so I'm going to continue this in a couple weeks. So actually next week, because next week is the third. Is this the fourth week? The fourth week? So I got 2 weeks now? Okay. Okay. So that's how that works. I got corrected. Thank you for the correction, Baba. No doubt. No doubt. But this is just, the first installment here of this Nature Paradigmatics. We're going to come back and get into a little more depths of what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to appear, what we're supposed to look like. Because this appearance that we have is just one aspect of it. And we're going to talk about next time chakras. We're going to talk about auras. We're going to talk about the light that dwells within us, because all this stuff is found in scripture. But what we have to do is demystify it. And we have to get out of this new age thought that this is all related to new age stuff. Okay, so we're going to definitely show how the scriptures speak about this. And we're children of light. We are the children of light. That is who we're intended to be. But I want to thank KUAW for having this platform. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. This is B. Michael here with Shifting Paradigms. I'm signing out. Peace and power. Shalom, shalom.